Welcome, everyone, to our Generation series. We are so happy to have everyone back today, and we have been looking forward to these episodes for quite some time. Today, we are going to be talking about how your age might impact your experience in the classroom and school community. This is a series, but it will be spread throughout the year, not all in one block. The episodes are going to focus on the teacher's experience depending on the teacher's age. And by the way, for this one, you do not have to be in your 20s to listen. So let's dive into the well. Hi, welcome to the Edgewell Podcast, a show created for, by, and with teachers. I'm Alex.
And I'm Chelsea. With over 30 years of combined teaching experience, our goal is to share insights and connect with fellow educators on how to thrive both personally and professionally.
Join us as we dive deep into the well of information, filled with meaningful discussions, practical tips, and ideas that go way beyond the classroom walls. Let's be well
and do well together.
All right, so this episode is different depending on what season of your life you are in. So you might be someone who's listening from the perspective of a 40 or a 50-year-old. This episode is still relevant to you, because you get to look back and remember kind of what it was like for you when you were in your 20s. And you might also listen and realize what people in their 20s are kind of experiencing, and it can activate a level of mentorship in you. Now, if you are in your 20s, then we're hoping that this episode speaks to kind of some of the experiences that you may be having. But Chelsea, this was a little while ago for both of us. So I'm hoping that we get some feedback texted to us with some different perspectives and points of view, and we can address those at a later date. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so. So when it comes to relating to someone who's in their 20s, I believe that we can do that, even though we're at different stages in our lives. But if there's one thing I've noticed, even just lately, it's that in the world, yes, things change and things change rapidly, but there are a lot of things that don't change.
We rebrand it, rename it, but the trends kind of keep on cropping up over and over. And one thing we talked about before we started kind of planning this episode is one size does also not fit all. You might be experiencing experiences that other people are experiencing in their 30s or 40s.
Yes.
So, we're kind of lumping everyone together. We want to acknowledge that. But we're hoping that in this episode, there are a few truths that do apply to you based on the fact that you're teaching while you're in your 20s. And there are advantages and there are disadvantages. And we just kind of want to talk about those and just kind of lay them out there.
Okay, so I'm just thinking back now. I'm doing my reflecting right now.
Yeah.
And I remember being in my 20s and getting the offer for my first job and the feeling that I got. I hung up the phone and then I just burst into tears. And I was with one of my best friends at the time. She's like, what's happening right now? You just got a job. And I was just so overwhelmed and excited about going into this new chapter of my life that I just had to let it all out. So it's okay to let it all out when you're feeling overwhelmed and excited. So I think when you're starting and you're young, you're in your 20s, you've got that new, fresh confidence, which is a major advantage. Once you get through those tears, if that happens to you, then you have that excitement building up. So that's an advantage for all of us, that confidence.
Okay, so this is my experience, and my experience was that I went in as the university student with an associate teacher, and I brought so much excitement and so much positive energy that I remember looking at the associate teachers' faces. They were almost taken back by my positivity and my excitement. And now, as a teacher with way more experience, what I'm realizing is I didn't at that point in my learning realize the breadth and the amount of learning I still had to do. So it was kind of beautiful that I had this positive confidence. But it wasn't until later years that I realized that there was kind of a little bit of, I didn't realize everything that was coming my way. There was an innocence in that confidence. There was an innocence in that positivity.
Yeah, and I can fully relate to that. And I think it is a beautiful place to be in because you have this courage. And I want to say that as a young teacher, as a new teacher, I was naive. And when I use the word naive, I'm honestly not using it with a negative connotation because I think that being naive in many situations is a huge part of learning. And I think it gives you that confidence that you would otherwise not have if you knew all the background, you knew all the facts, and you knew what was coming your way. So, for instance, I would take on all kinds of opportunities, not fully knowing what they entailed, and I would learn from each one. And at that time, I had all of the energy in the world for that. So it didn't affect me. I was like, yeah, let's do PD. Let's do everything. I loved it. So it really helped me in then making my future decisions. So it's a great place to be in.
Yeah, that level of confidence almost, like you said, makes you take risks and try new things. Whereas I find now that I've been doing things for a long time, I'm way too quick to say, that won't work. This will happen. This will happen. This will happen.
Yes.
And kind of go to all the negative possibilities. So that fresh confidence for me when I was new was something that was an advantage because it put me in a position to learn new things and figure things out. And you mentioned another advantage, Chelsea, and that was, when you're in your 20s, or when I was in my 20s, I had a much higher level of energy. And that was due to just my age and somewhat my circumstance. But in your 20s, you have a level of pep in your step, and everything is new and everything is fresh in this career. And so that can be a big advantage. And that comes out from you when you're talking and when you're moving. And when you put out that kind of energy filled approach, people respond really well to you. I just want to veer a little bit though. I'm thinking about what I'm saying here. I was kind of at a phase in my life where I had 2 young children when I first started teaching in my 20s. So as much as I had energy because of youth, a lot of that energy was hard to come by because I had another job to do once I got home. So, I mean, again, depending on what your life circumstances, that energy might be taken from you if you have young kids at home, which you might when you're in your 20s, right?
Yes, absolutely. And then for me, I didn't have any kids during that time, which is why I think that I would go home every night and I would be happy to work on school. I had a lot of time to do my planning and to bring new ideas into the classroom. So, yeah, it all depends on where you're at. So, I was really driven at that time. Not that I'm not still driven, but there are a lot of other people and things taking up my time now.
Well, there are people who are teaching all day long and then working a second job because being a new teacher can be precarious. You might be doing occasional work. So that energy that we're stating you in theory should have when you're in your 20s, perhaps that is not reasonable for everyone. But youth is an advantage in
Yes.
this role. And I'm going to bring up another advantage to do with age and energy levels. And that is when you're in your 20s and you're new to the profession, you, in theory, are much closer in age to the students. You have a deeper understanding of the culture that the students are living in and what their cultural references may be. And you're just younger. And that is appealing a lot of times to younger students. And you can leverage that and have more buy-in. And I know for me personally, I've started seeing that now that I'm getting a little bit older, that younger teachers who are coming in fresh out are connecting automatically with students on a level that I really can't to the same degree anymore. I still have a lot to offer, but there's not a cultural connection in the same way.
Yeah. I mean,
Pop culture.
but there is also the other side of that where, again, back to my first teaching position where I was 22 going into my first position and I was teaching 18-year-olds. And for me, I was terrified because I was thinking, what do I know that these students don't know? I mean, I just got out of university. They're just going into university. I was very afraid, and I was going in after someone. And you know what? Someone said to me, one of the teachers said to me, welcome to the school, but just so you know, you have some big shoes to fill. And that really crushed me. And so I felt even more scared, but I had to push through that. And I did. You know what? It worked out beautifully. I really enjoyed myself. I learned so much that year. But thinking back, I think about how much I really didn't know. But that's okay, because that's how you learn.
Well, two things about that. One is that comment, which, probably just rolled off of that colleague's mouth and crushed you. They probably thought nothing of it, right?
No, they weren't doing it. It wasn't spiteful or anything. It's just they had a lot of respect for the teacher before, and it wasn't it said in a mean way. But no, being a new teacher, I took it personally.
Right, but it makes me remember to be mindful about what I say to, my colleagues, because it has impact, right? And I feel like we're both in a nice position to be able to have colleagues that are older and younger than us. We're in the middle, and so making sure that we're doing that right. And the other thing is that when you're stepping into another classroom that has been run by someone else, while it's beneficial to be able to kind of emulate what someone else did, we've talked about authenticity and making sure that it's authentic to you and how you want to run the show with the students. So, yeah.
Yeah, I really do think that because I was in that stage where I was just so excited to get into it, I felt like I had control over my own agency. I was ready, so ready to take on a classroom. I was so ready to test my own strategies. So being in that sort of invincible stage really helped me.
You know what another really great advantage about being a teacher in your 20s is that when you have to switch grades, switch schools, switch situations, you aren't entrenched. You may be better able to handle those transitions. And there's just an openness. I find that once you've been teaching for a really long time and you have a level of predictability, it is challenging when there's a switch, unless you've sought it yourself, let's say. So there's a level of openness that you may have when you're in your 20s that serves you well, because those are the years where you get to bounce around, try lots of different grades, perhaps try different schools, different subjects. And really what's happening is you are widening, your experiences, and that will pay you forward in the future for sure.
True. I do remember being pretty excited to go into a new grade and to try new things. All of the extra work wasn't super daunting. So that's a nice place to be. It allows you to take those risks because you're seeing the whole future ahead of you. It's so bright. And I just want to throw a little tip out here for you, because I think it is one of the most adorable things I've ever seen. This is a sidebar, but I need to put it in this podcast. My son had his grade 6 graduation over a year ago, and his teacher got the whole class sunglasses. And the theme was because the future is so bright. So they were wearing sunglasses. I almost tear up when I tell that story, when I think about it, and they all have pictures in their sunglasses. And I'm like, that is the cutest thing I've ever seen for a graduation. So, hey, any listeners out there, you want to use that if you're organizing a graduation? It is such a great idea.
He'll remember that for the rest of his life too, for sure.
Yeah. And they looked really cute in their pictures.
I bet they did. All right, let's think of another advantage. This one really hits me because I've been out for so long. But when you finish up university and you end up in the classroom or in many classrooms, you have all the fresh, newest pedagogical ways of walking forward as a teacher. You are up to date. Whereas once, you've been doing it for a really long time, and I use the word entrenched, but I'll shift that. You are comfortable. And so trying new things can become difficult. So you have this kind of big advantage in that you are you are on the up and up and you have all the freshest information. So that is a massive advantage for new teachers in their 20s to use to their advantage. And I will just say right here, I've been incredibly grateful to be an associate teacher, and I've learned a lot from teachers coming into my spaces, and I observe and I get to see, new approaches, and I've taken some of those on. And then I also have colleagues who are in the schools who are in their 20s. And yeah, I'm learning. I'm getting some nice, lovely reverse mentorship for free, by the way.
Oh, that's nice. Well, another thing about being on the up and up is staying on the up and up. So, like you said, it's easy to fall out of that. It's easy to fall into your own ways and your time gets taken up by other things. And that's going to happen probably to all of us throughout our careers. But I do remember, since I had the time to advance as much as I could earlier in my career, and I'm grateful for that now.
Right. And in this day and age, we don't have to physically show up for a lot of this PD. It can be done online at times that work for us. So what a major advantage. And I'm going to throw out another advantage to PD, especially courses that are official courses. And for where we live, when we take more courses, we have the advantage of moving up the grid. And by grid, I mean the pay grid. And I think that is fantastic to front end load learning and as much as possible so you can apply it throughout your entire career, beginning, middle, end. And it can have a financial benefit. And that financial benefit can benefit you throughout the years where you're working. But something to consider, Chelsea, is that it can also benefit you when you're retired, because if you're contributing to a pension, you're increasing the amount of money that you contribute to a pension when you make more. So thinking about these types of things and taking advantage of the time that you may have, depending on the season of your life that you are in, is a great advantage.
Yes, that's extremely important to think about.
All right. And, there are many more advantages. And please, by all means, shoot us a text and throw out some advantages of being a teacher in your 20s that you see. We would love to hear about them and add them into an upcoming episode. We want to hear from you. That said, let's transition here and move into some of the disadvantages of being a teacher in your 20s.
Okay, well, let's talk about the ways students and parents may react to you as a young teacher.
Well, all right. I'm going to tell a story to illustrate this.
Yes.
So when I was in my 20s and I had all of those advantages when it came to energy and confidence and a little bit of uncertainty about everything that was also going on, just for clarity, I ended up in a space where there were 2 teacher options for a grade. And the other teacher had many years of experience. And on top of that, had a reputation. And the reputation was solid. And students and parents would look forward to being in this teacher's class. And so it turns out that it was me and this teacher. And it was, let's say, August. And unbeknownst to me, but I was informed of this by the person in charge, that pretty much every parent in the school who had a child in the grade that we were teaching called and requested that the kid be in the other teacher's class, not mine.
Oh,
and
come on.
I'm not exaggerating. The word every. I'm not being global here. I'm saying
wow.
the person in charge informed me that it was like pretty much every parent who has a child in this grade called to ask that their student be, in the other teacher's class. And
that's because they didn't know you yet.
That's right. But that devastated me.
Yes, no kidding.
That crushed my confidence. It made me feel insecure. So that happened. Mm-hmm. So that was an age and experience mix. And I also understand that. I do get it. I didn't have the reputation to precede me to have parents feel confident that everything would be just fine.
Okay, but I don't think it's necessary for everyone to make a phone call.
But it happened. And so, and by the way, the year turned out just great. And I got a lot of really good feedback from parents. The other thing that I'll quickly throw out there is interview time. When you're looking very much fresh out of university and you're doing parent teacher interviews, I now know the way that I'm treated as a teacher in my fourth decade versus my second decade.
Yeah.
And the experience that I have to be able to speak to certain things. I just really, the compare and contrast to the 20s, unreal, the way that I was reacted to. And you know what? I didn't handle things as well either. So it was fed back and forth. So that was a major disadvantage for me when I was a teacher in my 20s, was parents didn't take me as seriously or felt like they could kind of tell me how things were going to be. And I didn't command the level of respect to push back, let's say.
Okay. I'm glad that you said I didn't command the level of respect that you did deserve, because I think many of us can relate to that. When I was in my 20s teaching, I remember saying to basically my mentor, a colleague who was always giving me great advice and helping me out. And I said, I'm so nervous about the conferences again. And he just looked at me and he said, Chelsea, why are you nervous? Are you doing good things in your classroom? I said, yes. Can you justify the marks you give students? Do you think your classroom management is good? I said, yeah, I do. Like, things are going really well. And he said, then why are you nervous? And it made me think about what I was doing in my class and the fact that things were going very well. And it made me think about that story I was telling myself. And I'm big on this. What story are you telling yourself? So even when you went in your 20s, maybe you went in saying, am I doing this right? Am I confident? And I think we've all done that. I do that all the time. And then I say, you know what? Yeah, you are doing this right. You're doing a great job, and you have to build yourself up. I mean, how often have you come out of parent-teacher conferences and been like, even as a young teacher, oh, that went really well. Why was I so nervous about that? Because that has happened to me so many times.
Every
many
time.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the same. And Chelsea, you're hitting the nail on the head. That is exactly the story that I tell myself. I focus on every single thing that I have not done to standard, let's say, or, to my standard, or every mistake that I've made, every interaction that I wasn't proud of. That's my focus. And so in my 20s, I was the perfect person to kind of have that news of the phone calls, for instance, crush me. Now I'm able to redirect myself or challenge those thoughts in a different way. But at the time, the way people thought about me, or I was perceiving people were thinking about me, really impacted what I brought to the table.
Yeah, I think if you can learn early on, though, if you're seeing that your students are engaged, they're enjoying their year, you're teaching the curriculum, you're marking their work, you're doing everything that you can do, and you can be confident in that, that's really going to help in all conversations with students and with parents. So I hope that some listeners out there will hear that and really, take something from that.
Okay, here's another disadvantage. If you're a new teacher, every single new initiative seems to be the most important. And it's really overwhelming every year to have a ton of new initiatives coming into the school, being brought from different organizations, from your different boards, from other colleagues, whatever it may be. It's really hard to discern which one is that I have to do this one. This is very important. This is a must, versus this is one that was thrown my way, given to me optional. I just found it really hard to weed through the have tos versus the may considers. And so I think that is a major disadvantage, because you think that all those asks are tells, and a lot of them aren't.
Yes.
So I guess I'm just cautioning against thinking that every single thing that comes your way, every email that comes your way, we get things from all over. They're hierarchied though. And you have to figure out the hierarchy, is what I kind of trying to communicate here.
At the beginning of the episode, I said, I was really willing to take on all kinds of opportunities. And yeah, there was some pressure there, absolutely. And so I don't want to sound contradictory here, but you're right. Like you don't have to take on all those opportunities, because if you do, you're going to overwhelm yourself. And let me give you this, which I was saving for our best advice episode, but I'm going to use it in this one.
All right.
Back in that first year of teaching, one of the other teachers said to me, listen, make your life as easy as possible. So this teacher was not saying, oh, you should go and you should slack off and not take anything on. What he was saying was, you should think about what you are taking on, because no matter what you're taking on, there's going to be more to come throughout the year. We are familiar with these phases of the cycle here. Whereas someone going into their first, second year of teaching, not too much experience with the stages of the cycle, with the survival stage, with disillusionment. So like you said, be cautious, yes, about what you are taking on. And again, we're all about, what suits you. Yes, you want to go into uncomfortable situations and you want to learn. Really ask yourself, does this suit me right now? Does this suit my needs right now? Because you have to take care of yourself, of course.
Right. And I think a good indicator of have you taken too much on often happens when you start to suffer, your family life starts to suffer. What you're doing in the classroom, you're getting torn in different directions. Like, oh my gosh, I'm part of this initiative. I've got to check this email when you're supposed to be, working with students. So remember that, your main role is within that classroom, and that, you have an obligation also to keep yourself healthy, balanced, and well. And you also have a life outside of school that you also need to nurture. So I think you also mentioned the cycle. What a great time to bring that up. That's a disadvantage, that you do not know what is next. You do not know that right before the last few months of school, it's really hard to keep the students kind of engaged. At the same time, you're getting really tired. It is a disadvantage that you haven't lived through it several times, right?
Yes. Takes practice.
And time. Something that I found really, really was a disadvantage, and this kind of goes back to all those initiatives, but it's saying no as a newer teacher can be really, really challenging, because you're trying to find the balance between building your career and surviving, right? And it's challenging when you're learning how to juggle it all. And in my experience, you do get asked a fair bit when you're in your 20s and you've got all this perceived energy, and the word yes may come out of your mouth a lot more. And so finding the way to say no, it's just extra hard. I mean, people that I know have got really good at being able to know what it is that they can handle and what is too much. And so saying no, because they've seen the results of too many yeses, is a lot easier, I think, when you get a little bit more experienced in your career. So I think that's a really big disadvantage of being a new teacher, is that you get asked to do more and it's much harder to say no. And I said yes to way too many things back in the day. And so I was finding myself volunteering for so many extracurriculars that I wasn't able to do the job in the classroom as well as I should have, right? Because I had so many other distractions. And then what else starts to get worn down? The family starts to get worn down. Your health starts to get worn down. You miss that appointment to go to the gym because you're staying late after school. Those are great things to do. It's just making sure that the balance remains and that you're not biting off more than you can chew.
Well, yeah. And it goes back to that being intentional piece. Like, you have so much going on in the classroom. So you really have to take time and think about what can you handle outside of the classroom. So where do you want to put your time? What do you want to be intentional with? Because you're right. The classroom can suffer if you're suffering by taking on way too much. So yeah, good point. Good advice.
Yeah. And that's just the biggest disadvantage that I think about for my 20s. For me personally, because as I said in our last episode, I am not a person who walked into things and was super organized and task-oriented and understood everything that was going on. I was overwhelmed. And I was overwhelmed for many years before I got to the point where I could anticipate, understand the cycle, plan with the end in mind, and knew how to handle situations without even thinking. There were many years of just feeling like I was drowning in the well, Chelsea. And the well was completely secondary. There was no well. And so
Yes.
I look back to that time. Oh my goodness. And I have deep empathy for the struggle, because the struggle was really real. And I mean, now I'm able to look back. I'm so grateful for those years where I was working multiple jobs, taking AQ courses, raising kids, and trying to run a classroom, because I learned so much about why it's important to manage my time, why my health is so important, why balance is key, and how to achieve that. I think I had to go through those years, many, many years of that, to be able to really protect what I have now. Yeah.
Now you're really focused on that, conserving your energy.
I'm conserving. Yes. Well, we've started a bunch of conversations here, and I feel like we're going to end up spinning these into other episodes. What do you think about that?
It's going to happen.
So here are some things one might want to think about if they're teaching in their 20s. So you may want to remember that right now you are building. You are never going to be perfect. There is no such thing. And you will continue to evolve as a teacher and get better and enjoy the process, because that's how you get to where you want to go.
You are also connecting and building your support group, your whole network. And even if you're at one school and then you move to another school, you are still working with people that you can go back and connect with and get help from. So it's okay to move around and get new experiences, because you're widening that support network.
Try to remember, are you taking advantage of the fact that you are very relevant to students in a different way, being closer in age to them? How can you use that to your advantage? And remember, that's kind of one of your superpowers. And at some point, it is going to go away. So enjoy it while you have it.
Take those risks while you can. If you're feeling a little naive like I was, you know what? It worked out in my favor. So it's a good place to be in.
Exactly.
Have fun with it.
Have fun with it. Enjoy the ride. Don't be so hard on yourself. We've all been there.
If someone makes a comment, you can get through that. You can get over that. Use that confidence.
Well, that was a blast from the past.
Yes, it was.
As we're about to wrap things up, I'm thinking about student loans. I'm thinking about knowing that you have 30 years ahead of your career. I'm thinking about the fact that you may or may not be thinking about having kids in your life. Oh, the list goes on and on of different things, but the sky is the limit, and that's very exciting.
The future is bright. Put your sunglasses on.
Yes, put on those sunglasses. So I think we left you with some things to think about, and it's time to say goodbye.
Thank you so much again for listening today, teachers. We would love to hear your feedback about the show. All you have to do is click the link in the podcast show notes that says send us a text, and you can share your thoughts with us. We are always interested in hearing about the topics you want to learn more about or how you are enjoying the show. Your input helps us create content that matters to you. And don't forget to check us out on Instagram. You can find us at EDYOUWELL_podcast. That's EDYOUWELL_podcast. Until next time, be well
and do well.